Wars are fought with blood. But they're won with money. And in 1863, the Confederate States of America had almost none, cut off from global finance, lacking a functional tax system, and with much of its wealth tied to human slavery. The South's economy was like a house of cards, propped up by cotton and hope, but even cotton couldn't save it. Today, we're breaking down how the Confederacy's financial gamble on cotton bonds helped sink their war effort, and why they were doomed long before the last cannon fired. The Confederacy faced an uphill battle from the start, not just militarily, but financially. It didn't have access to Wall Street. London bankers were wary, and worst of all, it had no national taxation system when the war began. There was no income tax, no established central bank, and little infrastructure for raising funds. So, what did the South have? Cotton. The cash crop that powered the southern economy and fed the looms of England's textile industry. Desperate for capital, the Confederacy tried selling regular war bonds, but investors weren't buying. Supporting a rebellious slaveholding regime was a hard sell in Europe, and even for those who didn't care about morality. Lending to a country likely to lose wasn't smart finance. So, the Confederacy created a new type of bond, one backed by cotton. These cotton bonds were a stroke of ingenuity, if morally bankrupt. They promised redemption in cotton, 6 British pence per pound, and in 1863, that was a compelling offer. Why? Because English mills were starving for cotton to keep their machines spinning. And despite the ethics, demand was real. What commodity were Confederate bonds backed by in 1863? A. Gold. B. Tobacco. C. Cotton. D. Slaves. The answer? C. Cotton. To drive up demand and prices, the Confederacy did something radical. They embargoed their own cotton exports. That's right, they stopped selling the one thing the world wanted from them. It was a high-stakes gamble. And at first it worked. Cotton prices skyrocketed from 6 pence to over 27 pence per pound. The value of their cotton bonds surged, and the Confederacy appeared to have the upper hand. But here's the thing about gambling. You need to know when to stop. Then came 1862. The Union captured New Orleans and gained control of the Mississippi River, a vital artery for Confederate trade. Suddenly, huge swathes of the South were cut off from the outside world. Cotton could no longer be exported. Bondholders couldn't be paid. The collateral was stuck. Historian Niall Ferguson summed it up perfectly. The Confederacy had turned off the cotton tap, but then lost the ability to turn it back on. By 1863, British mills had moved on, turning to Egypt, India, and even China for cotton. Demand for southern cotton fell, and with it, the last major source of Confederate capital. What critical trade route did the Union control after capturing New Orleans? A. The Atlantic coast. B. The Appalachian Trail. C. The Mississippi River. D. The Erie Canal. Answer: C. The Mississippi River. As confidence in the cotton bonds collapsed, so did the South's financial credibility. They couldn't borrow, they couldn't sell cotton, and they couldn't pay their soldiers or fund their war machine. Inflation soared. The Confederate dollar became almost worthless, and with each Union victory, investor confidence eroded further. By the time the war dragged into its final years, the South was not only losing the battlefield, but the economic war too. The Confederacy's cause was wrong, built on the brutal foundation of slavery. It was a rebellion against democracy and humanity. But even beyond those truths, the South lost the war in part because it simply couldn't afford to win. Their economy collapsed under the weight of bad strategy, limited capital, and moral bankruptcy. Cotton may have been king, but without ships, buyers, or banks, it became a stranded asset. Why did confidence in Confederate cotton bonds collapse? A. Britain declared war on the South. B. Cotton prices fell due to oversupply. C. The Confederacy lost access to export routes. D. They defaulted on gold-backed loans. Answer: C. The Civil War ended with the Union victory in 1865, but in many ways, the South's fate was sealed years earlier, when its economy unraveled from the inside out. Because wars aren't just fought with bullets, they are fought with bonds, banks, and budgets. Thanks for watching. If you learned something new, drop a like, hit subscribe, and tell us. What other forgotten financial stories from history should we cover next?